biggest obstacle to advancing women isn't talent, it's power. It's who the power lies with. The leaders who say they support diversity but never advocate for a woman when it really matters. It's companies that set up mentorship programs instead of fixing promotion biases. Welcome to the Future Ready Leader podcast, where we explore the strategies, the mindsets, and the innovations that are shaping leaders like you for tomorrow. I'm McKinsey, Executive Leadership Advisor and CEO of the Phoenix Coaching Company, and I'm here to help you amplify your leadership impact, navigate change with confidence, and create lasting growth in your organization and in yourself. Each episode will dive into leadership insights, real-world experiences, and transformative ideas to help professionals like yourself unlock your full potential. So if you're ready to future-proof your leadership and inspire meaningful change, let's get started. Welcome to the Future Ready Leader podcast, where we don't just talk about leadership trends, we interrogate them. I'm your host, Afshin Ismail-Way, CEO and Leadership Advisor at the Phoenix Coaching Company. Today, we're diving into a topic that's been discussed and analyzed and solved in 100 different ways: women in leadership. And we're going to be looking at the numbers, the so-called progress, and the uncomfortable reality behind it. So here's the truth: women in leadership aren't just underrepresented, they are systematically excluded, and the reasons go deeper than corporate DEI programs and pay transparency policies. So today we're not going to have another polite conversation about mentorship programs and flexible work policies. We're going to be asking, why are we still here? Who benefits from the way things are? And what would it take to really break the system rather than to navigate it? Because let's be clear, governments and corporations in this moment are actively pulling the plug on DEI altogether. So this isn't about slow progress. It's about resistance. It's about backlash. Because the real story isn't just how hard it is for women to progress, it's how hard some people are working to make sure that they don't. Let's start with the numbers. McKinsey's Women in the Workplace report shows that between 2015 and 2024, women's representation in senior management grew from 32% to 37%, and in the C-suite from 17% to 29%. Now let's look at those numbers again. A decade of effort, billions and billions spent on DEI, and we've progressed by 5%. And everybody knows the data. It's going to take another 50 years for us to get to gender parity. And yet every International Women's Day, just like today, we hear the same speeches. We've come so far. Look at these inspiring women leaders. Let's keep pushing forward. But what if we stop pushing forward? What if we start pushing back? What if instead of celebrating tiny wins, we ask, why is this progress so slow? And who benefits from keeping women at mid-level positions and not at the top? And why do companies actually measure success in DEI by how many women they're hiring rather than how many they're promoting and how many they're paying equally? This isn't progress. It's the illusion of progress. And the system thrives on that illusion. We love to talk about gender challenges as if they are an unfortunate accident, but they're not. They are design flaws in a system that is archaic, that was built for men, by men, to reward men. And now that those features are challenged, there are influential pockets in the system that are fighting back harder than ever. So I'm going to share some brutal truths. The pay gap, it's actually a power gap. Women don't earn less because they choose lower paying careers. They earn less because some companies can actually get away with paying them less. So let's stop acting like the gender pay gap is an inevitable math problem. It's a policy choice. And another thing, women don't have a confidence gap. They have a credibility gap. We tell women to speak up, to be assertive, And when they are, we penalize them for being aggressive. And then we encourage them to lean in. And then we penalize them when they ask for higher salaries. And then we say, oh, just believe in yourself, as if self-belief can override deeply entrenched systemic bias. And motherhood, that's not a problem. The workplaces, outdated patriarchal structures are the problem. But women are paying the motherhood penalty. And it exists again because systems in organizations were designed for a workforce that assumed that men work and women care. Flexible work is just a band-aid, unfortunately. True change is going to require restructuring how we define leadership itself. Current DEI efforts are faltering because they are designed to make companies look good, but not to create real equity. Ask any HR leader, and many will say to you that the biggest obstacle to advancing women isn't talent, it's power. It's who the power lies with. The leaders who say they support diversity but never advocate for a woman when it really matters. It's companies that set up mentorship programs instead of fixing promotion biases. And in that moment, something actually does start shifting. We're watching in real time what really happens. The system kills it. And yet we're being told as women to keep pushing on, to keep pushing forward. But from my vantage point, the elimination of DEI programs, it isn't about cutting waste. It's about cutting access. We can't really fix this by playing the game better. We have to change the game. So what I'm going to ask is to stop accepting the same old solution and instead ask, why do companies focus on fixing women rather than fixing leadership? And what would happen if women just stopped having to ask for a seat at the table and new tables were built entirely? And what if businesses that aren't doing it right now were required to tie executive bonuses to gender parity so that the equity became a business priority and not just a PR talking point? Because the change we need won't come from another women's initiative tucked inside HR. It has to come from rewiring how we define leadership and success and making gender equity a hard business requirement, not just a nice to have, and forcing organizations that aren't doing it to choose between keeping their outdated systems or staying competitive. Because if the system doesn't serve women, it's not the women we need to fix. We need to dismantle the system. So here's my challenge for 2025. Let's stop waiting for the system to catch up. Let's change it. Let's make it catch up. Let's build new tables. And instead of trying to get women into existing power structures, let's create new ones that actually work for women. And let's promote women-founded companies, women-led ventures, women in decision-making roles, not just on diversity panels. Let's stop treating DEI as if it's an HR issue. It's a business strategy because company profits and share performance can be close to 50% higher when women are well represented in senior leadership. So boards should not be tolerating a lack of diversity, just like they would not be tolerating a revenue drop. So if gender equity doesn't show up in your organization's business KPIs, you should be asking yourself if all the DI efforts are just a short-sighted PR stunt. And let's stop rewarding companies for doing the bare minimum. If a company still has an all-male executive team in 2025, they aren't just behind, they're actively choosing exclusion. Let's hold organizations accountable. Let's call them out because silence is complicity. And to every woman listening, you don't owe gratitude for the progress you've made. Stop shrinking, stop waiting. You don't need to prove yourself. Lead loudly, lead differently, lead on your own terms because we don't need another decade of progress. We need power shifts. We need fewer conversations about how hard it is for women to rise and more action in making it impossible for companies to operate without gender equity. That's the real conversation we need to be having. And if it makes some people uncomfortable, maybe that's a good thing. We've been uncomfortable for a while too. And that means finally talking about the right things. Well, thank you for tuning into the Future Ready Leader podcast. If this episode challenged you, I hope you'll share it, because leadership isn't about waiting for permission. It's about taking action.